Welcome to Heartmend, where every story is a journey from pain to peace. Today's story begins in a billionaire's library, where a simple maid found an envelope hidden for 20 years. I thought my success was my own, but this letter proved my own brother had tried to destroy me since the day I was born. But the real shock. It wasn't the money he stole, it was the secret my wife kept to save my life when we had nothing. Stay with me until the end, because the twist in this story will mend your heart and change how you look at the people you love. The dust in this mansion does not settle. It hangs in the air like the ghosts of my past. I stand at the window of my library. I look out over an estate that cost more than the village where I was born. My hands are soft now. But I can still feel the ghost of the blisters from the construction sites. I can still taste the salt of the sweat that used to be my only meal. 20 years ago, I was not a titan of industry. I was a ghost in the shadows of the city. I was a man who slept on cardboard and dreamed of bread. People did not look at me. They looked through me. I felt the cold bite of betrayal when my own kin closed their doors. They said I was a curse. They said I would never amount to anything but a burden. The pain was a physical weight in my chest. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket of failure. Then, I met Elena. She was not a queen. She was a woman who worked 3 jobs and still had a smile that could light the dark. She saw the man beneath the rags. She shared her meager soup with me in the freezing rain. She told me that my mind was a gold mine that the world had not discovered yet. We lived in a room no larger than this rug. But with her, I felt like I owned the sky. She worked until her fingers bled to buy my first suit for an interview. She sacrificed her dreams so that mine could breathe. Years of toil followed. Years of no, and doors slammed in my face. But today, a new maid was cleaning these shelves. She moved a heavy volume of ancient history. A thick, yellowed envelope fell to the floor. My heart stopped. I recognized the handwriting on the front. It was the elegant, shaky script of the woman who left me at my lowest point. The woman I thought had vanished with my last shred of hope. I picked it up. The paper felt cold. Inside was a document that changed everything I thought I knew about my struggle. The paper was heavy, a relic from a time of deep desperation. I looked at the date on the top corner. It was from the winter when the hunger was a constant, gnawing companion. It was the month when I believed the world had finally turned its back on me. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the single sheet of parchment. It was a bank draft, a sum that would have saved us then. It was a small fortune that could have bought the medicine Elena needed. But next to it was a note from my brother. The brother who told me he had nothing to give. The brother who watched me scavenge for scraps in the gutter. I cannot let you succeed, the letter began in his sharp, cruel hand. You were always the one with the vision, and I was the shadow. I intercepted this inheritance from our grandfather. I watched you fail because it made me feel powerful. I hope the cold finally breaks your spirit. The shock hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me in this golden room. All those years of thinking I was a failure by fate. All those nights Elena cried in silence because we could not afford a heater. It was not bad luck that kept us in the dirt. It was a calculated, cold-blooded betrayal by my own blood. I looked at the envelope again, my eyes burning with a new kind of fire. The maid stood there, her eyes wide with a quiet, observant grace. She did not know she had just handed me a weapon from the past. I walked to the mahogany desk and sat down heavily. The leather of the chair felt like a mockery of my former skin. I realized then that my success was a miracle born of spite and love. Elena entered the room, her presence a soft light against the growing storm. She saw the paper in my hand and the look in my eyes. She did not ask what was wrong, she simply placed a hand on my shoulder. Her touch was the only thing that kept me from shattering the glass walls. The truth is a heavy burden, she whispered, as if she already knew. I looked up at her, the woman who worked until her bones ached for me. "He stole our youth," I said, my voice a low, dangerous rumble. "He watched us suffer for his own pride." I stood up, the document gripped tight in my fist. The man who once had nothing now had everything. And for the first time, I felt a hunger that bread could not satisfy. I walked toward the phone to call my lawyers, my heart a drum of war. But as I reached for it, the maid cleared her throat. "There is one more thing inside the lining of the envelope, sir." I reached back into the torn lining of the heavy envelope. My fingers brushed against a small, cold piece of metal. It was a key, tarnished with the passage of 2 decades. Attached to it was a second note, written in a different hand. It was the delicate, hurried script of my mother. "My son, if you find this, your brother has already failed you. He thinks he has taken your future by hiding the money. He does not know that the money was only a distraction. The real wealth is not in the bank, but in the earth we walked. The old cottage in the valley was never sold as he claimed. I signed the deed to you alone, hidden beneath the floorboards. I knew his heart was dark, but yours was always full of light." The revelation felt like a lightning strike in the quiet library. I looked at Elena, her eyes reflecting the gold of the sunset. All those years we lived in a cardboard box under the bridge. All those winters we shivered while a home stood empty for us. My brother had not just stolen my inheritance, he had stolen our peace. He had watched us starve while he lived in a lie of my making. I felt a roar of cold, calculated fury rise in my throat. The man I was would have burned the world down for this. But I looked at my hands, the hands that built an empire. I looked at the woman who never once complained of the cold. "He wanted me to become like him," I whispered to the empty air. "He wanted the struggle to turn my heart into a stone." I picked up the phone, but I did not call the police. I called my head of security, my voice as sharp as a razor. "Find my brother," I commanded, the words echoing off the books. "Bring him to the old cottage in the valley by dawn. Do not tell him who is waiting for him in the shadows." Elena stepped closer, her hand resting on the ancient key. "Justice is a fire," she said, her voice a soft, steady warning. "Be careful that you do not burn the man I love to find it." I looked at the maid, who was still standing by the shelf. She held a second envelope she had found behind the first. It was addressed to Elena, in a hand I did not recognize. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. What else had been hidden in the darkness of this library? I reached for the second envelope with a hand that felt made of lead. The handwriting was jagged, sharp, and unfamiliar. It was addressed simply to the woman who stayed. Elena took it from me, her breath hitching in her throat. She broke the seal with a slow, deliberate grace. Inside was a photograph, yellowed and curled at the edges. It showed a much younger Elena, standing outside a hospital. She looked exhausted, her eyes hollow with a secret grief. There was a receipt stapled to the back of the image. It was a record of a massive payment made 20 years ago. A payment to a private investigator and a legal firm. My heart thudded in the silence of the library. I looked at the date, it was the week I had been arrested. The week the police claimed I had stolen the materials from the site. I had always believed it was a miracle that the charges were dropped. The second envelope was smaller, yellowed by the same cruel years. It bore Elena's name in a script that looked like a prayer. I handed it to her, my hand shaking more than her own. She opened it with a quiet, steady grace that always humbled me. Inside was a photograph, faded and cracked at the edges. It showed a young woman standing in front of a clinic I recognized. It was the clinic where I had taken her when she was dying of fever. The clinic that had turned us away because we had no coins. On the back of the photo, a message was scrawled in my brother's hand. "I paid the doctor to turn you away that night," it read. "I wanted to see if your love was stronger than his hunger. I wanted to see if he would leave you to save himself." The silence in the library became a physical, suffocating thing. I looked at Elena, the woman who had nearly died in my arms. She had gasped for breath on a wet sidewalk while he watched. He had stood in the shadows of that clinic, holding the gold. He had gambled with her life to satisfy a twisted, dark curiosity. A red veil descended over my vision, a heat I could not contain. This was no longer about a stolen house or a hidden bank draft. This was about the breath he tried to steal from her lungs. Elena did not cry, she simply closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were filled with a terrifying wisdom. He did not know, she whispered, her voice like a sharpened blade. He did not know that the hunger only made our love a fire. He tried to kill the girl, but he created the lioness. She looked at me, and I saw a reflection of my own resolve. We would not wait for the dawn at the cottage in the valley. I picked up the phone again and dialed a number I never used. It was the direct line to the man who handled my most private debts. "Cancel the meeting at the cottage," I said, my voice cold as ice. "I want every asset he owns frozen by the time the sun rises. I want him to feel the exact weight of the cardboard I slept on." I turned to the maid, who was trembling by the mahogany shelf. "Pack a bag," I told her, my eyes fixed on the distant hills. "We are going to the cottage tonight, but not for a reunion. We are going to find what my mother truly left behind the walls." I grabbed my coat, the silk lining feeling like a shroud of war. As we walked toward the door, the library lights flickered and died. In the sudden dark, I felt a hand grab mine, strong and unyielding. It was not Elena's hand. The hand was thin and weathered, yet it held the strength of a lifetime of labor. It was the maid, her eyes burning with a sudden, fierce clarity. "Do not go there with hate in your heart, sir," she whispered. "Hate is the same poison that turned your brother into a monster. If you seek only to destroy him, you will lose the man Elena saved." I looked at her, and then at Elena, whose face was a mask of quiet peace. We drove to the valley cottage as the moon hung low and heavy. The old wood groaned as I pushed the door open to our past. I knelt by the hearth and pulled back the rotted floorboards. There, wrapped in oilcloth, was not more gold or cold documents. It was a small, hand-carved wooden box filled with letters. Letters my mother had written to us every single day we were hungry. She had sent them with money, with bread, and with her blessing. My brother had intercepted every single one, feeding them to the dark. But in the very bottom lay a deed and a simple, silver key. It was not to a mansion, but to a community clinic she had founded in secret. "The greatest revenge is to heal what he tried to break," the final note read. I stood up, the fire of my anger cooling into a deep, solid stone of purpose. I did not call the police, I did not strip him of his clothes. I signed over his entire debt to the clinic, making him its lowest servant. He would spend his life cleaning the floors of the place he tried to close. He would see the faces of the poor every day and know their names. I looked at Elena under the vast, starlit sky of the valley. We had started with nothing, and for a moment, we sought blood. But we realized that true success is not the height of your towers. It is the depth of your mercy and the strength of the hand you hold. Hardship is a fire that can either melt you or forge you into steel. We chose to be the steel that supports the weak, not the fire that burns them. The moral of our journey was written in the dust of that old cottage. Success without soul is just a polished cage for a lonely heart. Love is the only currency that never loses its value in the dark. We walked away from the past, finally free, leaving the door open for others.